In the sweltering haze of the Arizona Territory back in 1885, where the jagged peaks of the Superstition Mountains loomed like silent guardians over the parched plains and the tiny outpost of Cactus Bend clung to life amid saloons buzzing with cowboys' tall tales and miners' desperate hopes, Amos Caldwell presided over the vast double-bar ranch with the unyielding resolve of a man forged in the fires of the Civil War, having lost his beloved wife Eliza to the cruel grip of childbirth fever. While bringing their only child Sarah into a world as harsh as the desert winds, and though the local folks held him in high esteem for his honest cattle trades, his quiet charity during droughts that withered herds and dreams alike, and his uncanny knack for predicting storms by the shift in the air, they couldn't help but gossip in hushed tones about his enigmatic daily routine, how without fail 3 times each day. At the first blush of dawn when the sky bled pink, at the merciless peak of noon when heat waves danced like mirages, and at the somber hush of dusk when shadows stretched long and coyotes began their eerie chorus. He would halt his labors, whether branding calves with irons hot as pokers or mending fences splintered by stampedes, to saddle his loyal black stallion Shadow whose coat gleamed like polished obsidian and whose hooves thundered with the rhythm of old battles, riding out alone to the gnarled ancient oak standing solitary on the eastern ridge like a weathered sentinel etched against the horizon, vanishing for precisely 30 minutes before returning with an inscrutable peace etched on his rugged face, a serenity that sparked wild speculations among the ranch hands like old Cookie the grizzled chuckwagon maestro who spun yarns of Amos communing with spectral lovers from his past, or Jimbo the wiry young wrangler who bet his last silver dollar that Pa was stashing away ill-gotten treasures from forgotten train robberies. Yet Sarah, now a spirited 22 with calloused hands from roping steers and eyes sharp as a hawk's from scanning endless horizons, had always respected the invisible boundary of her father's privacy, learning early that in the untamed West a man's secrets were his fortress against the chaos of outlaws and opportunists, until the ominous shadow of the Iron Fist Gang descended upon the territory like a plague of locusts, a band of ruthless marauders captained by the infamous Vance "Iron" McCoy, a scarred ex-Confederate with a prosthetic hand of cold steel that crushed throats as easily as it fired bullets, their notoriety built on a string of brutal bank heists in Tucson and Phoenix where they left tellers slumped in pools of blood and vaults stripped bare, now rumored to be veering north toward Cactus Bend enticed by whispers of a massive silver payroll rumbling in on the next Wells Fargo stagecoach laden with ingots destined for the smelters, igniting a wave of terror that saw townsfolk barricading doors with splintered timber, Miss Kitty the fiery saloon proprietress polishing her double-barreled shotgun behind the bar while serving rotgut whiskey to trembling patrons, and the young sheriff Bill Harlan, barely seasoned with his badge still shiny and his hands unsteady from the weight of responsibility thrust upon him after the previous lawman's untimely demise in a dusty ambush, calling desperate town meetings in the rickety church to rally a posse amid prayers for deliverance, and it was during one such blistering noon when Amos paused mid-task, his sweat-soaked shirt clinging to his broad back as he glanced skyward at the sun's merciless blaze, muttered a single word "time," and rode off toward the oak as reliably as the ticking of a pocket watch, that Sarah's curiosity finally overpowered her restraint like a dam bursting under floodwaters, compelling her to saddle her trusty sorrel mare Dusty with the white blaze on her forehead and follow at a cautious distance, weaving through clusters of prickly pear cacti and scrubby mesquite that clawed at her chaps, tying off at a rocky outcrop and creeping forward on foot with boots silent on the sandy soil until she peered from behind a boulder to witness the ritual unfold, her father dismounting with deliberate grace, kneeling on the hard-packed earth before the oak's massive trunk scarred by lightning strikes of yore, withdrawing a tattered leather-bound Bible from his saddlebag whose pages fluttered faintly in the hot breeze, bowing his head to murmur the familiar words of the Lord's Prayer, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name," in a voice resonant with quiet devotion that Sarah recognized from countless suppers where grace preceded every meager meal, then rising abruptly to draw his prized pearl-handled Colt .45 revolver, a relic from his wartime scouting days oiled to perfection and balanced like an extension of his arm, spinning the cylinder with a metallic click before firing 3 deliberate shots skyward. Bang echoing sharp and authoritative, a measured pause, bang ripping through the silence again, another breath, bang thundering finality. the reports cascading across the valleys like divine proclamations before he holstered the weapon with practiced ease, knelt once more in brief reflection, and remounted to depart, leaving Sarah hidden and reeling with a torrent of questions swirling in her mind like dust devils on the plain. Was it a signal to unseen allies, a mad compulsion born of grief, or simply the disciplined honing of skills in a land where death lurked behind every ridge, and that very night as thunderheads boiled on the horizon promising rare relief in sheets of rain, Sarah lay awake in her simple bunk amid the creaks of the ranch house timbers, her thoughts churning until dawn when riders galloped into Cactus Bend with grim tidings that the Iron Fist gang had ambushed the stage 10 miles south on the rutted trail, riddling the driver and shotgun rider with lead until their bodies slumped lifeless over the reins, looting the strongbox of its $20,000 in gleaming silver bars before vanishing into the Badlands like ghosts, prompting Sheriff Harlan to muster the posse with urgent fervor, lanterns flickering in the pre-dawn gloom as men checked cartridges and cinched girths, and Sarah, defying conventions of her gender in a world dominated by spurs and Stetsons, strapped on her own holster and insisted on riding alongside, her Winchester rifle slung across her back, with Amos nodding silent approval, knowing her aim was true from years of hunting varmints and her spirit unbreakable like the land itself. And they tracked the outlaws' fresh spoor through arroyos carved by flash floods and up into a narrow canyon choked with boulders where the gang's campfire smoke betrayed their lair, dismounting to advance on foot with hearts pounding and palms slick on triggers until a sentry's rifle cracked the ambush, bullets whining off rocks like angry hornets as chaos erupted in acrid gunpowder haze, Sarah squeezing off rounds that felled one snarling bandit mid-charge while the sheriff clutched his grazed arm with blood seeping through fingers, men shouting curses and prayers intermingled until Amos surged forward like a force of nature, his voice a low rumble reciting, "Our Father," under the din before drawing his Colt in a blur of motion and unleashing 3 impeccable shots that shattered McCoy's steel hand into sparking fragments, buckled his knee with a wet crunch, and punched through his shoulder to spin him into the dirt howling in defeat, the remaining gang members freezing in terror before dropping weapons and raising hands as the posse closed in, binding them with rawhide thongs and recovering the stolen silver amid whoops of victory, and as they triumphantly paraded back into Cactus Bend with the captives trussed over saddles and dust-caked faces beaming under the rising sun, the town erupted in jubilation with church bells clanging wildly and Miss Kitty pouring free rounds at the saloon where folks clustered around Amos demanding the secret of his unearthly marksmanship, until he finally relented over a tin cup of coffee, revealing that the thrice-daily rides were a solemn vow to Eliza's memory, reciting, "My Father," as she had called the prayer from her Eastern upbringing to anchor his soul in faith amid the wilderness's temptations, followed by 3 shots to maintain the razor-sharp reflexes honed in wartime reconnaissance where a split-second draw meant life or oblivion, a harmonious ritual of spiritual solace and practical vigilance that had unwittingly prepared him to deliver the town from peril, yet the astonishment was far from over when mere days later a polished carriage from San Francisco clattered into the dusty Main Street bearing Elias Thorne, a bespectacled lawyer with starched collar and sheaf of surveys, announcing to a gathering crowd that geological assays proved the ground directly beneath that venerable oak concealed the territory's richest untapped silver vein, a subterranean river of or valued in the millions that the Iron Fist gang had covertly plotted to seize through forged claims and the staged diversion, a fortune Amos had obliviously knelt and fired over for 2 decades without the faintest inkling, sending shockwaves rippling through Arizona as newspapers from Phoenix to Tombstone splashed headlines like "Rancher's Holy Ritual Guards Hidden Riches," and drawing a flood of wide-eyed prospectors, shrewd investors, and curious historians who swelled Cactus Bend into a bustling hub, though Amos, ever the humble steward, sold mining shares judiciously to fund a gleaming new hospital where doctors tended the injured from cave-ins, a sturdy schoolhouse ringing with children's laughter, and an expanded church whose steeple pierced the sky like a prayer answered, even extending olive branches to reformed outlaws by hiring them as laborers in the shafts where they traded 6-shooters for picks under his watchful eye. And as digging progressed deeper into the earth it unearthed not only silver but ancient Native American artifacts including a gleaming golden idol from a forgotten tribe that sparked tales of curses when tools mysteriously shattered and timbers groaned ominously, rumors Amos quelled by intensifying his prayers until the mishaps faded like morning mist, donating the relics to distant museums amid scholarly fanfare, and then came the personal revelations when a yellowed envelope postmarked Virginia arrived bearing a long-overdue war medal for Amos's unsung bravery as a Union scout, prompting the territorial governor to host a grand ceremony where the rancher demonstrated his ritual before an awestruck assembly, firing 3 blanks heavenward after the prayer to thunderous applause, further cementing his legend as the prayin' rancher, whose daily devotion had not merely thwarted villains and unveiled wealth but woven a tapestry of community and redemption across the land. And in the ensuing years, as seasons cycled through blistering summers and rare winter frosts, Sarah wed the now-seasoned Sheriff Harlan in a joyous ridgetop ceremony beneath the oak, with 3 celebratory shots echoing joyfully, bearing children who scampered the ranch learning the prayer at their grandfather's knee while he bounced them on laps weathered by toil, continuing the ritual unflaggingly until age finally claimed him. Peacefully one dusk as he knelt in familiar posture, the entire region mourning yet celebrating by interring him beside Eliza under the tree's shade, forever enshrining the man whose unassuming habit of invoking "my father" 3 times a day had profoundly shocked, safeguarded, prospered, and eternally engaged the hearts of all who knew his extraordinary tale.